The day I told my family I wanted to join the U.S. Army, my father looked at me with disappointment and said, "You're a disgrace to this family. The Army is no place for a woman." Those words hurt more than anything I had ever heard. My name is Emma Carter, and I grew up in a small town where everyone believed women should stay close to home, get married, and live a quiet life. But ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed of serving my country. Every time I saw soldiers, helping people during disasters or protecting innocent lives, I knew that was the life I wanted. My mother begged me to change my mind, saying the military was too dangerous. My older brother, Ryan, laughed and told everyone I would quit before finishing basic training. Even my relatives mocked me during family gatherings, saying I was chasing a man's dream. I smiled through the pain because I knew arguing would change nothing. Deep inside, I made myself one promise. One day, I would prove that courage has nothing to do with whether you are a man or a woman. A month later, I packed my small suitcase and left home before sunrise. No one came to say goodbye except my grandmother. She hugged me tightly, slipped a small American flag into my hand, and whispered, "Never let anyone tell you what you can't become. I'm proud of you." Those words stayed with me throughout the hardest days of basic training. The training was tougher than I had ever imagined. My body ached every morning. My hands were covered in blisters, and many nights I cried silently from exhaustion. There were moments when I wanted to give up, but every time I remembered my family's words, I pushed myself even harder. I refused to let them be right. Months later, I proudly graduated from training wearing my Army uniform. As I stood during the graduation ceremony, I looked around hoping to see a familiar face. Families were cheering, hugging their loved ones, and celebrating together. But my seat remained empty. My parents never came. My brother never called. The only person who applauded for me was my grandmother, standing alone with tears of pride in her eyes. At that moment, I realized that sometimes the people who believe in you the least are your own family. I had no idea that years later, those same people would come to my door desperately asking for my help. The years passed quickly, and the little girl my family once laughed at became Captain Emma Carter. I served my country with pride, completed several overseas deployments, and led soldiers through some of the most challenging moments of their lives. The Army taught me discipline, courage, and leadership, but it also taught me compassion. During natural disasters, my unit rescued families trapped by floods and delivered food and medical supplies to communities in need. Every medal I received reminded me of one thing. I had earned my place through hard work, not by proving my family wrong. Although I rarely heard from my parents, I never allowed bitterness to fill my heart. Every birthday and Christmas, I still sent them a card. Most of the time, they never replied. The only person who called me regularly was my grandmother. She proudly kept my photographs in uniform on her living room wall and always ended our conversations by saying, "I knew you would make us proud one day." Those words meant more to me than any medal I had ever received. One evening, after returning from an overseas assignment, I received an unexpected phone call from my hometown. It was my grandmother. Her voice was shaking as she said, "Emma, your father is very sick. The family business is collapsing. The bank is preparing to take the house. And your brother has disappeared after making several terrible financial decisions. They don't know who else to ask." I stayed silent for a long moment. These were the same people who had called me a disgrace, laughed at my dreams, and treated me like I no longer belonged to the family. Now, after years of silence, they suddenly remembered my name. The next day, I drove back to the town I had left years earlier. As I parked outside my childhood home, I noticed how much everything had changed. The house that had once been full of life now looked worn and neglected. When I walked to the front door, my father slowly opened it. The proud man who had once looked down on me now looked tired, weak, and ashamed. With tears in his eyes, he quietly said the words I never thought I would hear. "Emma, we need your help." I stepped inside the house without saying a word. Everything looked different. The furniture had been sold. Family photos were missing from the walls, and the home that had once been filled with laughter now felt cold and empty. My father slowly sat down and admitted that after I left, my brother, Ryan, convinced him to expand the family construction business using large bank loans. At first, everything went well, but Ryan became greedy. He made risky investments, trusted dishonest business partners, and ignored every warning. Within a few years, the company was drowning in debt. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings, and they had only a few weeks before losing. Everything my parents had worked for their entire lives. My father lowered his head and quietly said, "I should have listened to you instead of judging you. I spent years believing strength belonged only to sons. I was wrong." Hearing those words didn't make me happy. They simply reminded me how much time our family had lost because of pride. Just then, Ryan walked into the room. He looked nothing like the confident man who had laughed at me years earlier. His shoulders were slumped, and the arrogance had completely disappeared. He stopped in front of me, unable to meet my eyes. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Emma, I'm sorry. I mocked your dream because I was jealous. While you were earning respect through hard work, I thought success would come easily. I failed our family." The room fell silent. Everyone waited for my response. I could have reminded him of every cruel word he had ever said. I could have walked away and left them to face the consequences alone. Instead, I took a deep breath and calmly said, "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because Grandma taught me that families should help each other, even after painful mistakes." Tears filled my grandmother's eyes as she smiled proudly. Then I looked at the financial papers spread across the table. After years of leading soldiers through difficult missions, I had learned how to stay calm under pressure. As I studied the documents, I realized there was still one chance to save my family, but it would require a sacrifice. After reviewing every financial document, I realized the business could still be saved, but only if someone was willing to make difficult decisions. I agreed to help on one condition. I would take complete control of the company until every debt was paid, and no one would interfere with my decisions. My father immediately agreed. Ryan quietly nodded because he knew he had lost the right to lead. Over the next year, I took unpaid leave from the Army and worked day and night to rebuild the business. I cut unnecessary expenses, renegotiated contracts, sold unused equipment, and earned back the trust of customers who had been ignored for years. It was exhausting, but slowly the company recovered. The bank canceled the foreclosure. The employees kept their jobs, and for the first time in years, the business made a profit again. One evening, my father walked into my office holding the old Army graduation photo that my grandmother had always kept. With tears in his eyes, he said, "The daughter I once called a disgrace became the person who saved this family. I have never been more ashamed of my words or more proud of the woman you've become." Hearing those words healed a wound I had carried for years. A few months later, our entire family gathered for my grandmother's 85th birthday. As everyone sat around the dinner table, my father stood up with tears in his eyes. In front of our relatives, neighbors, and old family friends, he said, "Years ago, I believed my daughter had embarrassed our family by joining the Army. Today, I want everyone to know that she is the greatest source of pride our family has ever had." The room filled with applause. Ryan walked over, hugged me tightly, and quietly whispered, "Thank you for saving us when we didn't deserve it." I smiled and replied, "Real strength isn't getting revenge. Real strength is choosing to do the right thing even after you've been hurt." Looking around the table, I realized I had already won years ago. Not because I proved my family wrong, but because I never let their rejection change the kind of person I wanted to become. The Army had taught me courage, discipline, and leadership, but my grandmother had taught me something even greater: forgiveness. My family once believed I had brought shame upon them by wearing a military uniform. In the end, that same uniform became a symbol of honor, resilience, and hope. The greatest victory of my life was never earning medals or promotions. It was earning back my family's respect without ever losing my kindness. Some battles are fought on distant fields, but the hardest battles are often fought within our own families. I learned that revenge may satisfy anger for a moment, but forgiveness has the power to change. Lesson: never judge someone's dream because it is different from your own. True honor is not found in what people say about you. It's found in the character you show when life gives you the chance to choose between revenge and compassion.